Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. I'm Jared.
I'm Ethan. And today we're going to talk with Ashley Class. She has a lot of different investment properties here in Charlotte, and she talks with us about some different strategies that she has, long-term strategies for long-term rentals, short-term strategies, Airbnbs, as well as some advice to those who are maybe looking to get into the real estate world. So we have a great podcast for you. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in the pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
Okay, so today we have Ashley Class with us. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me.
Ashley, I was checking out the way that, I guess I'll start with the way that I found you. I was looking on Instagram at Charlotte area real estate gurus, and I found your page, and I've been following it for a while, and I was like, you know what, this lady's actually pretty interesting. I like some of her stuff, and you do so many different things, and so I was so happy for you after I reached out and you said that you'd be willing to chat with us. So first of all, thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely, and I'm thanks for following me. I mean, honestly, the whole idea of the page is that I'm a third generation general contractor, so I just want to show. There's HGTV kills me because it's not real. And so sometimes you'll see on my Instagram page, things happen. It's not real. Projects take a long time. So I just kind of want to give a little dose of realness. So
That's
appreciate
good.
it.
We need some more reality in this world.
Yeah. Less reality TV, but reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. You should get your own TV show and it'll just be like the hard things, you know.
It might depress people. I don't know.
The reality of the reality.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Instead of the quick, easy, let's show it and then let's flip it quick. You'll be like, oh gosh.
Let's spend 5 minutes on demo and then have a whole crew come in for 2 days and take everything out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I would love to do just blast a countertop and then we're done.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So Ashley, you have your hands on a variety of different things. Talk to us about what your portfolio looks like. I know that you do Airbnb, you do some rentals, you do some renovations, you do some consulting. Tell us about all that.
Yeah. So like I said, third generation contractor, and also, started really looking and getting into my employment during the recession. So it was all, don't put your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So I have long-term rentals. My husband and I own them. I have some prior to us being married that we have also. And then we have some short-term rentals, which are Airbnbs. We flip as well. And then I also consult as a design consultant and now as an Airbnb consultant, which means I go and help somebody set up and give them a whole list of what are the essentials to make it your brand and what you present at your Airbnb is reflected in the reviews. So you want to make sure it's set up right. You want to make sure it's kitschy. It's something interesting that makes people want to stay there. So I kind of help them kind of create that identity.
Yeah, maybe we can walk through each of those different things that you do and ask questions about those. So the first one that you mentioned there was your long-term rentals. I guess kind of curious about that is, one, how do you find these deals, and do you have them all in the Charlotte, North Carolina area so that you can go visit them, or do you have some? I know you said that on our earlier conversation that you were from the New York area, and you had some that previous to your marriage. Do you have some up there, and how do you manage those?
I do not. My father is up in New York, and he's the one that really got me into rentals. He was big on always trying to sell me with, buy a house as soon as you can, buy a house as soon as you can. But, we see so many times that baby boomers could afford houses much easier than our generation may be able to afford houses. People are still living at home with their parents. And then, so long story short, he had taught me the rental game when I was in New York. I remember being very young and somebody had a midnight move out in the middle of the night. They left. They didn't want to pay rent. So 8-year-old me was with my dad, putting on our boots and vacuuming. I mean, that, or doing a roof or something. And so I moved to Charlotte after living in New York with everything in my car. I sold everything and wanted a clean slate, and bought my first house. Became really interested in renovating it slowly. He had taught me a lot, but obviously when you're 600 miles away from the only person taught you everything you got to learn, YouTube's great. And then what I started to do was something that you see a lot, especially in Charlotte right now, is that I rented out rooms to help pay the mortgage, to help build kind of pay down my loan. And then from there started to refinance and have more homes. And so long story short, again, they're all in Charlotte. Also, I'm from New York, so I do talk with my hands. So you'll see that a lot. They're all in Charlotte, and I like to drive there, and I like to build that reputation, especially with long-term tenants that are there. Long-term tenants are going to do the most damage. So they're the ones you really need to have the most reputation and the best rapport with. So around the Christmas time, I'll drop off a bottle of wine. During COVID, I dropped off toilet paper and paper towels because they're paying the rent and I appreciate it. I mean, it's a crazy time right now. So it's that mutual neighborly feel that I think makes us successful in the long run.
I like that you said that because I've listened to some Bigger Pockets stuff. I'm sure you've heard of Bigger Pockets. And I've actually heard of some people saying, well, I don't want my tenants knowing that I'm the landlord because then they're going to ask me all kinds of stuff. Have you ever run across that line of thinking? It sounds like you're the exact opposite of that.
I have absolutely thought about it because I have had tenants where, they'll move in and they'll say, I'd really like is something like this. And I'm like, I would like that too, but I can't afford that.
Maybe we can raise your rent and then we can afford that.
Yeah. Like one guy asked for me to put a pool in for his dog. Come on now.
That's that premium service.
Seriously. I mean, that's where the Airbnbs come in, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, and this is what I think that we're all starting to get back into, especially where we can't travel as much, is the people that are next door to you or in your community are most important. And you really have to treat them with the respect and the neighborly, like it almost like some very 1960s Mr. Rogers, but I think it's coming back. And I think that when you start treating people with kindness, sure, there's annoying points, but at the end of the day, they're going to respect you. And yes, I heavily vet my tenants and I make sure like if you've had 5 evictions, okay, well, there's a pattern here. So I'm shame on, what is it? Fool me once, shame on
you,
me.
fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, you got to be educated about the people you choose and what you do. And that's any investment you make. But I think having that neighborly good vibe is important. And that's just good karma down the road.
Yeah. I think people, what is it? This saying, you can attract more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's a balance probably between being kind and being nice, but then also at the same point, if someone's not paying their rent, then there's a time to not that you're not going to be kind, but take other actions, right?
Right.
You said something earlier that I wanted to kind of take a step back and go into is you said you bought your first house, you started renovating it a little bit and kind of learning all the different ins and outs of that. You're renting out some rooms, and then you refinanced. And then at that point, is that you're kind of building this snowball of you refinanced, you took some of your equity out, and then used that money for another rental, and then basically you just did the same thing with that. You bought a long-term rental, maybe it needed some improvements, some fixing up, so you did that, got someone in there, and then after a time period, whether it's 6 months or a year, you refinanced that one and got more, and then just kind of doing that over and over again. Has that been your strategy for obtaining these rental properties?
Yeah. So, you spoke about Bigger Pockets earlier, and that's one of the strategies is the BRRRR method, and that's buy, rehab, refinance, repeat. And so when I purchased my first home, I knew that it was an up and coming area. At the time, Plaza Shamrock, if you're familiar with Charlotte, it was off the extension of the plaza, which was not good 8 years ago, but it is great now. I didn't keep that house for 8 years. I'll tell you that. Wish I did. But yeah, I think that method really works for those that you have to remember that it is an investment. So you can't go crazy. You can't go and put all these different, touches that you think you're going to live in there forever and then expect a buyer to want. So you have to be smart about how you rehab as well, because, there is a strategy, again, going back to Bigger Pockets, because I learned a lot from there and different podcasts, is the 70% method. And that's 70% of your purchase price and your rehab price should be 70% of the house value. So if you're paying a house that's already worth 70%, but you have to put in another 15%, you're losing money because you got to pay for real estate costs and taxes and all these different things. So it's just something to keep in mind when people look at their rehabs or they look at even buying their own home. Don't start putting all these special touches if you don't plan to live there for a long time.
Yeah, I like that. I've listened a lot about the BRRRR method, the buy, rent, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
I like that method a lot, especially because sometimes you can pull out that equity again and you can keep going. I guess one complaint, or I guess one contra argument to that would be that during the financial crisis, during COVID, people stopped paying their rents. So if you're leveraged to the hilt, then you're depending on that payment every single month, that's where you could get into a tricky situation. So a lot of people have said, the BRRRR method is dead. I've heard that quite a bit recently.
Huh.
But I guess it just depends on how leveraged you are.
Well, I'd also say you have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
I mean, your rent should be 1% of what the whole house value. Mm-hmm. So if you're paying more than that and you're getting less rent, then yes, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think, again, homes, a lot of people see HGTV and they think, man, this is easy. I'm just going to flip some countertops and I'm going to make it pretty. And then I'm going to get $2,000 in rent. That's not the world today. You really have to know your numbers. You have to do your analysis and you have to do the work.
I think that is huge. I really like that. You got to know your numbers, do the analysis, and put in the work. That a lot of times, and I've probably fallen into this realm as well, as you kind of get these, your eyes kind of gloss over. You're just like, oh, that looks so easy. Yep. I watched this entire house get renovated and sold for $50,000 more than they bought it for, and it only took an hour. And it's just like. And I think that's the research behind it and understanding kind of some of these base principles and maybe even the market and what comps are in the area definitely are important in that, at least in my research that I've done up to this point.
So 100%.
One question that I want to ask kind of to bridge to the next topic, and this was something I asked for, but we didn't really get on it. But how do you find these deals? And I guess that also goes for Airbnb, which we'll touch on next. But how do you find deals for rentals and then Airbnbs?
So people say MLS is dead, and it's not. And that's where I have found every deal except one is MLS. So Zillow, Redfin, just Realtor.com. You look at these homes, and if the areas, again, do your research. And I think that my 8th grade teacher taught me this a long time ago, and I'll never forget Miss Calbrett. I'm going to give her a shout out right now. She said you could be a big fish in a small pond or be a small fish in a big pond. I
think you said it right. A big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond.
There's a big pond. Yep. Again, you know what I mean. But yes. At the end of the day, know your neighborhoods. You cannot work across Charlotte. Charlotte's so sprawling, so big. There's so many different investors. You're not going to know your niche if you keep trying to keep up with everybody else. So I think knowing the neighborhoods, knowing the zip codes, I have only a certain zip code, only 3 or 4 zip codes that I really look at because I know those neighborhoods really well. I know how they're growing. I know what's coming in. I know what permits to look for the city permits to see, are they putting a Chipotle there? Or are they, then I know what's coming. But if you try to do a search and try to pull every city permit and see where the, Chipotles are coming, you're not going to find those deals. I've worked with some wholesalers, but candidly, they are all cash deals and not everybody has cash. So I wouldn't recommend it starting off. I would say MLS, looking at if you're looking for a long-term rental, then you're going to look at neighborhoods that are not up and coming, which is nicer on your bank account, but it's going to be less rent. So you're going to have to, give that toss up. But then if you want a short-term rental, you're going to have to pay a higher price up front, and there's going to be higher upfront costs because you don't want to be 40 minutes outside of Charlotte if somebody wants a short-term rental to visit Charlotte. So you're going to pay for more. And the kitschier, the more interesting it is, that's going to be more of your Airbnb market. So I try to look at both. One of my first Airbnbs actually was a flip I was doing. It was a 1920s bungalow home in Optimus Park or Noda area. And we took the plaster off the walls and literally the house split and it almost collapsed because I don't believe in bulldozing homes. I like to keep old charm. I believe that good bones are good bones. And the rehab cost me an extra $45,000.
Oh, wow.
There's no room for profit there. And so you have to be flexible, especially as an investor, of what am I going to do? How am I going to afford this? And so that's really when I started to look into the short-term market because it was the cutest bungalow, so kitschy, walkable everywhere. And I thought, man, that would be kind of fun as a vacation rental. And sure enough, it's one of the most famous ones in Charlotte because people love that 1920s feel and they love that it's a cute little home that they can rent. And then it's easy to get to places.
That's a great story. How many Airbnbs do you have?
So I have 4 of my own, and then I actually property manage.
Wow.
So
okay.
We're trying to extend and grow.
So do you make like a percentage off of each stay, or how does that work with the ones you manage?
Yeah, so I make a percentage off each stay, whether it's consulting. I offer different, I call them packages in a way, just because people starting off, I, again, believe in karma, and I'm not going to rake them over the coals. So we'll talk about maybe in the long run, I get a percentage of when you sell the house and we can write that up, or I get a percentage of the stays. So you know that I'm hustling and I'm working for you to get people in and I'm communicating and you're getting good reviews. Or is it just, I kind of stand back and you property manage it yourself and I teach you how to put those training wheels on and I kind of push the bike into the sunset. So I have a variety of 30 of them that we work and we have our own little team that gets out there and does maintenance, does the garbages every week. People don't think about, you got to pull the garbages out and you got to bring them back in. So it's been really interesting. It's been a great experience. And so we're hoping to expand a little bit more.
That's awesome. What, and I like how it's kind of, just the strategy of if you're doing short-term rentals and you want to be close to cool things. And if you're not, then people won't want to be there, which that areas typically are more expensive areas. But what have you seen as far as these short-term or these Airbnbs with, I guess it's rental periods? Do you see people usually come in for a week or just for a couple days, or do they sit empty for a period of time? And how has COVID affected that?
If I could tell you last year by year, the patterns were the same. People come in for the holidays. They want to see their family. Charlotte's a very young area. Summers are busy as well. They want to visit their families. COVID has changed everything for short-term rentals. And it's been really, really interesting. I'm getting a lot of longer short-term rentals. People are coming from New York City, or they're realizing that they can be remote and work anywhere. As long as you offer good Wi-Fi. If I didn't have a 4-month-old, I would be in a silver bullet going across the United States because I think that's so cool.
Yeah, totally.
So I have a lot. I have, one of our Airbnbs, we have a group of traveling nurses in right now because they're coming in to help with the COVID effort. They're staying for 3 months, and then and they don't want to bring a lot of stuff. So furnished rental is the way to go.
Do you charge a different rate for that? Like for a longer term, do you charge a different rate?
I do. And, especially with first responders, I give a little bit more of a discount because while they're getting their own, traveling nurses, they get weekly pay and then they get payment for lodging and food. But at the same time, they're the ones that are holding the fort down for all of us. So I give them a little bit more of a discount. And then I kind of do it as a tiered structure. The shorter you stay, the less discount you get. But a lot of long-term stays going on right now. It's really fascinating just to talk to people and try to understand where everybody's kind of coming from. People are really interested in Charlotte, and I don't see this market slowing down anytime soon.
That's very interesting. I guess one thing is that one cautionary people, whenever you tell people you're thinking about doing something, or there's always the naysayers. They're like, oh, well, this is terrible because of this, or renters will always destroy your houses, or Airbnb, you'll just get a bunch of drunk frat guys in there and they're going to destroy your house. Have you ever had that happen where, someone, a tenant or like a short-term tenant just parties in your place, trashes it, and you're like, hey man, you got to pay me some collateral. You got to pony up some money to fix this stuff.
Yeah, I've had some stories. I mean, probably not the most PG, so I'm going to keep those away for another night. But I would say, it's interesting because with COVID, a lot of people are bored and restless, and I think especially teenagers. And what I've had multiple times is people using their parents' credit card, starting a new profile, renting out an Airbnb, and then having these raging parties. So you got to be really, really safe.
So this is like a Home Alone 2 situation. Like, this is Peter McAllister, the father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretending like you're your parent to buy something to stay in the hotel room.
I mean, at the end of the day, I almost want to give these kids a job because they're so entrepreneurial. Like, they're paying people a cover to get into these parties in Charlotte. Like, they're paying for the whole night in money, and then they're making money. I mean,
wow.
But then the hosts have to deal with the aftermath, which is not fun.
Oh,
so.
yeah, I'm sure. With teenagers, they have no respect for anything, and then it's just on their parents' card.
Yeah, it's true. And the bill they get are just like, Kevin's dad in Home Alone.
You spent $967 on room service.
Yeah, exactly. So $967 on a broken couch later.
Yeah. Wow. We just showed that movie to my kids this Christmas, and they absolutely loved it. They thought it was hilarious.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So what would we talked about Charlotte and kind of the growth with that. What are some signs? I mean, you said it's been about 8 years since you've been in Charlotte, and mm-hmm. kind of you've seen the market grow. What are some signs that you see? The Charlotte market. You're in certain mm-hmm. areas. You're that big fish in the small pond, right? Certain of those area codes or the zip codes that you that we're talking about. What are some of the signs of a growing market, and maybe even when you get down to some of these rentals, maybe let's talk some long-term rentals. What type of areas do you look for?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing I look at right now to know if Charlotte, how the market is in whole, what's the health of it, is the inventory overall. So if you look within the 485 loop, you have, on average, I think it's, and I'm going to mess this up and realtors are going to come at me. So don't come at me.
I don't think too many realtors listen to our show, but anyway.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet,
yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. I mean, let's say average, there's 2 months of homes on inventory, they say. And that's, how many houses are viewed they look at, how many houses have offers on them, how many houses go on the market a day. They say, okay, we have about 2 months worth, counting all those factors into play. We have 0.8 of a month in Charlotte. This is the lowest it's ever been for inventory. People are getting, their offers are going 20 and 30% over asking. That's a sign of a really healthy, growing market. For me, besides that, it's the study. I look at growth from big commercial or even government profitability. So when that light rail, when they came out with the Silver Line, and the city of Charlotte said the Silver Line is going to be created by, I think, 2030, and it's going all the way to Gastonia. First thing on investors' minds were what zip codes are in Gastonia and where can we buy? Because
exactly.
And that's the long-term rental aesthetic, is how long can you hold it, or how long do you need to hold it? And then that's where you start thinking about short-term or long-term rentals.
Yeah. And then we grew up here, Ethan and I, and the amount of growth is just unbelievable. We grew up in kind of Providence Plantation. I don't know if you know where that is, but that used to be on the very verge of civilization, and there was cornfields, by our house, and there was we grew up, and there was acres and acres and acres of woods behind our house, and now, I mean, that area is just so. That is Charlotte. That's in Charlotte, and so it's just like crazy. And now I'm living in Indian land, and I'm kind of like on the cusp of where things are starting to grow. Maybe in another 30 years, my house will be worth $1 million.
Oh, I think it's coming faster than you think for Indian land.
Yeah. I remember I remember, I don't know, maybe we were in middle school or something like that, and they plowed out one of the cornfields down in South Charlotte by our parents' house, and they put up a huge development. And I can't even remember what those houses were going for at that point in time, but they were kind of cookie cutter type houses, which, is fine. And, I wouldn't doubt to say that those houses have tripled in value.
Oh, yeah.
At least. And it was just like, man, Dad should have bought 10 of those houses at that time.
He should have, yeah.
I know. I think about this one home. I pass it all the time, and it hurts my soul. That's how bad it is. Because 8 years ago, I was a bartender in Charlotte, and my dad was after me, buy a home. Charlotte's growing, buy a home. And I thought, I can't, on a bartender salary, I'm not going to be able to, show proof of income to get a property. But I walked one home, and it's over by Ed's Tavern in Dilworth. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yeah,
Dilworth is one of the highest valued areas in the city. I was looking at it yesterday.
It hurts my soul. So I almost
you avoid Dilworth now from now on.
It's like it just, oh gosh, $150,000 home 8 years ago, just sold, never touched it. Nobody did anything. They left the roof as is for $875,000.
Wow.
That's people retire on that. That is insane. That's Charlotte for you. I mean,
that is great. So, like, really, I guess let's go back to another question. You're buying long-term rentals, you're buying Airbnbs. Are you more focused on that short-term cash income, or are you is that just good, but you're really more focused on that long-term appreciation aspect? Well, I guess I'm sure you're playing all those angles, but what are you most concerned about?
Yeah, I think, long-term, you could, like Airbnb, when people think about short-term rentals, what they don't realize is Airbnb is also a long-term strategy. I mean, they just filed for IPO. Let's think about that.
Yeah.
And so they expect to be around for a little bit for profitability. But as long as my goal going into short-term rentals when I was very green and I didn't know what to expect was, if I can pay the mortgage, then I'm still putting money in the bank because it's not my money, right? And so to me, it was like a bank account. If I can pay that, then that's another step, another month of having this home. Who knows what the Charlotte market is? I mean, on average, every year by year, it's 20% growth of the previous price of what your house value was. So if I can hold it for 12 months, 12 payments, that's what I kept thinking. Short-term rentals, I think, are harder, as I said, to set up at the beginning. You have to pay for the location. You have to pay for everything from how many forks you're going to have, chairs, linen, sheets, all these different things that people don't think about that they need when they're, traveling from California for a month. They need those coffee cups or the filters or something to make it easier on them. But in the long run, you have a fully furnished house that's really growth value, paying mortgage, and that's going to be your higher increase of rate. So I think it's, I did an Instagram post about it a couple of days ago, actually, of it depends on where people are in that game or that phase. Is long term, you pay less going in, you have somebody paying your mortgage. If you pay over that, you're still winning. Like, you're still going ahead, you're still paying down that mortgage. If you're paying cash, even better. I mean, but not many people are able to do that. Airbnb short term, that's just, I like the meeting people aspect. I like being able to turn over. And then I also like less wear and tear. Because again, those long term, they're going to,
unless you're talking about the teenagers.
Yeah.
But even that, I mean, long term, you're having, that you're putting holes in the walls, and you're having, constant traffic or pets or
people never cleaning the shower, which just boggles my mind.
Yeah. And then you get that Carolina clay that we are so, well known for, that comes in the
All over
water.
the carpet. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's all over. So right now the short-term rental market is very interesting to me. And then that less wear and tear. If I can have, my goal is always 10 days a month. If I can pay my mortgage for 10 days, then if it's empty the rest of those, 20 days, that's less wear and tear on the home. That's less of a utility bill for me. So it works out.
Yeah.
One question I have is that, I'm kind of interested in getting into maybe investing in rental property or something. And I'm curious about financing. Do you put 20% down and then refinance after you've rehabbed, or do you go do that through a bank, or do you use hard money lenders, or how do you do that?
I've done a variety of lending. It really depends on how long you want to hold it. So if you want a long-term rental that you are going to wait, it'll be worth your while to do a bank or conventional loan if you're going to hold it for 5 to 10 years. If you're flipping it and you're only holding it for a month or two, in perfect HGTV status, I would say that's where the hard money lending comes in. But hard money lenders, while it doesn't hit your credit, and some people have bad credit, and I understand that it may not be the easiest to get conventional loans, you're going to pay, they pay a finder's fee, you pay them every month, it does add up too pretty quick. So it's not something that you want for a long-term strategy.
Yeah, that's good. It all depends on what you want to do, really. Have you ever run up? I know you said you have several rentals and Airbnb. You own those houses. Have you gotten to the point where you're personally so over leveraged? The bank is like, yeah, we're not going to loan you anything else.
I hope
not. I know a
I
lot of investors, they run up against that. I think you
Yeah.
can only have like 10 properties, I think it is. And then they're like,
Yes.
yeah, we can't loan to you anymore. And then you're like, ugh. Then you have to do like owner financing type stuff. Other tricks and stuff.
Real estate, anybody can do it. That's the first thing I think, we were on the phone and I spoke about that. Anybody can do it, but there's so many different niches on real estate besides neighborhoods. And when you're looking at different homes or different leveraging short-term rentals, long-term rentals, flips, there's people out there that are starting by just lending an investor 5 to 10 grand and getting a return on profit. So they get a percentage of what they ever make. That's how some people start. I mean, there's so many different ways to make money in the real estate market. It's incredible. It's just, you have to look and you have to be flexible with those options.
I know that you had mentioned wholesaling a little bit earlier. I know there's a lot of people that basically just they try to find a good deal and then they find a cash buyer, or typically to sell that good deal to. Have you ever dabbled in kind of the finding side of wholesaling at all, or?
So I've purchased from a wholesaler, but I got to tell you, that is hard work. And I would much rather fix a pipe in plumbing that's been clogged up for 100 years than go door to door and ask somebody, can I buy your house? Because that takes guts and that takes a lot of rejection. And that's just not for me. That's not my niche.
Yeah.
But I purchased from a wholesaler, very easy transaction to do. It is kind of borderline. Some states are actually making that not possible anymore to wholesale unless you work with a realtor. But as far as North Carolina, it's still legal.
One of the questions I had for you, and this is something that I guess with you mentioned that you manage all those Airbnbs, so you're basically a property manager in a large sense. Have you ever thought about purchasing a property like Myrtle Beach or down somewhere Charleston or something like that, and managing those? And that's kind of a different vacation rentals. Well, I guess it's similar to Airbnb, but it's having something at the beach is maybe a little bit different. Have you thought about doing that or acquiring a property down at the beach?
Oh yeah, I would love to have a house in the beach or the mountains. I mean, just thinking about now having a baby, it would be great to be able to go a couple days and, you can check on the property, but also spend some time with family. Seems like great. What's really important for me, especially with having Charlotte rentals, is kind of having an eye on things. And that I think would be a little bit more difficult. You'd have to have a really trustworthy property management team. It's very easy. I've had it happen to me before. I know a lot of people that have had it happen as well. It's really easy for people to get comfortable, and not everybody's going to treat your home like you would treat it. And so not everybody's going to treat your business and your brand like you would treat it either. And so you got to be very mindful of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to consider, because that's 100% true. Someone else is not going to treat your stuff like you would treat your stuff. My wife and I have actually been looking for the past little while we would love to get a cabin up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Just something that it's a space to where we could just go up and escape into the woods, basically. Maybe somewhere with a little bit of land, but then at the same point, we're like, well, we don't want to just, it would probably increase over time in value, but it's not something that we don't want to just pay the mortgage to be up there for, a couple days a month, maybe. And that's that Airbnb kind of is something that's like, well, you get people in for 10 days out of the month, and then you could go up there for the rest of the time, or maybe you could experience that same, kind of like Jared said, vacation spot or whatever it may be at that same time. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, and I love that idea. I really do. You just got to find the right team. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about it, but there is. For example, during Christmas, we had a random white Christmas. Well, Charlotte didn't, but a lot of the mountains did. Unfortunately, some of those guests were stuck. So
really,
if you don't have a plow truck to go up there and get them out, they're stuck there for 2-3 weeks. And then what do? So you can't really kick out people that can't leave your cabin. So.
Yeah, send them a bill.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, but if you're far away from there and you don't have someone, some kind of property manager or someone that you trust up there, that would definitely be difficult.
It would be, yeah. But you do meet a lot of great people. I would say far more often on VRBO and Airbnb, any short-term rental. I meet so many interesting people, and some people still stay in touch with me today. I never thought of it as, I don't really ever speak to, somebody if I stay at their home for Airbnb, but some people are just, they want to, that connection. And that's what I think is a really interesting part of it too.
Yeah. Do you do VRBO as well, or do you just do Airbnb?
I dabbled into VRBO and Furnish Finders, which is specifically towards medical professionals like traveling nurses. I just found that I like the user interface of Airbnb. I like the way they treat their hosts. I like the way they treat their guests. And, overall, it just really works for me. But there's a lot of people that dabble in all of them. It's just when you have so many different Airbnbs and you have so many moving pieces, you have to make sure those calendars are synced, or you got multiple people showing up on the same day, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we've talked about some great stuff, and we've kind of jumped around and talked about a lot of different topics at the same time too. But maybe let's say in your experience over the past years of in real estate and with your father and being a contractor and stuff like that, what advice would you give to someone who really is interested in investing for their first time in real estate? What would you say to them? What should they know before they do something, could pull the trigger on anything?
Any quote you get, add triple that to that quote just to be safe. But also start small. There are so many unique ways to get into real estate, and then also stay in your own lane. I caught myself so many times thinking, oh my gosh, by this age, I expected to have this many houses, or if I want to be able to retire and pay off all my debt early, this is what I need to do. This other person's doing this. Focus on what works for you and stay in your lane. That's the biggest thing. Do your homework, as I said, and then do it right. Don't cut corners when you're rehabbing a home. That will bite you long run, especially if Charlotte's a small town, but it's a big city. So I would hate for somebody to be like, oh, Ashley sold me this home and the plumbing broke within the first week. Your reputation's everything. So don't cut corners.
You mentioned the small ways to get into real estate and small ways. Can you maybe talk about what some of those might be for someone getting in?
Yeah. So one thing that I find interesting for a short-term rental is rental arbitrage. And that's one way of you work with the landlord of, properties that are, especially during COVID, there might be a lot out there. So I recommend for those kind of wanting to dabble. Basically, it's vacant properties that are unfurnished, that landlords, they just want their monthly cut and they want that monthly rent. So if you work with them, especially if it's homes and you don't have to worry about HOA or you don't have to worry about apartment complexes, all you would have to pay for is the initial startup fees for Airbnb. And then you could manage out of the property instead of buying a home, the rental, short-term rentals. So you just have to make sure that you make that rental payment, obviously, to the landlord. But if you have that conversation with them, that's a very easy, low-cost way. Wholesaling, again, if you have the guts to go door to door, send those mailers, make those phone calls, look at the tax records and see anybody that's delinquent, by all means, go for it. There's so many people in Charlotte that offer mentorship, or, there's Bigger Pockets, there's YouTube. There's so much information out there that's available to them. So I would recommend, those are the two options I'd probably start off with first. And then the third way I would say is if you do decide to buy a home and you don't have to worry about having, a family or anybody else in the property, let's say, like for me, when I was single, rent out your rooms. And that way you can make the mortgage as well. So the more people you have, it may not be comfortable for 1 or 2 years, but you're paying off your rent you're paying off your mortgage in the long run. And that's a fun way to get into real estate. And then you can refinance later on or sell the home, and that's your bank account.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I've never heard of that Airbnb arbitrage. That's our rental arbitrage. I've never heard of that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Basically, you just say, you contact somebody that maybe has a vacant property, and you say their mortgage is $1,200 or $1,500 a month, and you say, well, I'll get you $1,800, and then anything over that goes to you or whatever it may be.
Or, if they only want $1,200 a month, you could be smart and just say, hey, I'd like to use this as a short-term rental. I will pay for any of the damages.
Yeah.
I'll pay you $1,200 a month.
And your mortgage is going to be covered.
Yeah.
And they don't have to think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, and then you just have to plan and do your research about what people are, paying per night. And there's different websites out there that can help and show you so that you know what, there's airdna.com, beyondpricing.com. Those help and really show like where to look and what you're going to get per night for a rating. So you kind of know how many nights you need to book to pay that rent and how many, you can make a profit from. And there's people in Charlotte, there's people nationwide. They have 60, 90, 100 homes, and they're doing rental arbitrage. They don't own anything.
That's so interesting. I guess I know you had a question, but before Ethan's question, I just wanted to ask, do you find that there's only opportunities to do that like in the downtown area, or say like in maybe a town in the outskirts, like say Matthews or Fort Mill or Harrisburg or something like that? Is there opportunities to do Airbnbs out there too?
There's Airbnb opportunity anywhere, which is what I find really interesting. I would say even like the uptown area, as I want to call it downtown so badly, but I know it's uptown. Nobody's staying there anymore. So many families are coming in to see what Charlotte is about, but they're also seeing, if they're building a home, I'm getting a lot of people saying, I want to rent a home. We have a house in Ballantyne that's 97% occupancy because homes are being built and they want to be close to seeing their home built. So there's one investor I know that only does Gastonia. And you would think Gastonia, who's going there right now that's not going to live there. But it's a lot of traveling medical professionals coming around the hospitals around there. It's an easy way to get in between Greenville and Charlotte. It's anywhere. It's really just, like I said, go to Beyond Pricing, AirDNA. You can find out really what are some hot pockets.
Very good.
Yeah, my question probably relates more to long-term rentals, well, I mean, I guess it could relate to anything, but what would you tell the person that says, oh, real estate, I should get my real estate license, or, I should be a real estate agent before I go into real estate investing? What would you tell that person?
I would say unless they are very passionate about being an agent, I would deter them. I do not have my real estate license, and I don't want it. That's not my niche. If you want to be an agent, then that is your passion, go for it. But you don't need to be an investor to you don't need to have your license to be an investor. Like I said, there's real estate investing, whether it's purchasing a home, renting a home, short-term, long-term, giving hard money to somebody working in a budget or working in a funding group that offers money to flippers, being a wholesaler. There's so many different ways to do it that you just have to be able to do the work and roll up your sleeves with knowing the market yourselves. You don't need a class to pay for that.
I like it.
Very good advice. We're nearing the end here. I just wanted to give you a chance to, is there anything that we missed that maybe you were hoping to, I've always wanted to share this about real estate. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
So one thing I would say is if you want to get quotes, and a lot of people might be surprised at this, don't use your name. It's interesting because social media is so easy to find the picture of who that person is, what they do. There's a lot of times people make an assumption or a judgment about you right at the beginning. And unfortunately, you may get different quotes as well because of it. So I always recommend that if people want to get true quotes, get 3 quotes always, no matter what job you want, 3 quotes. Don't always go with the lowest bid. The lowest bid, there's a reason there's a lowest bid. But also use a different alias or use a different name, especially if you're heavily into real estate investing, and ask them the same questions. If you get the same quote, they're a trustworthy person that's going to do the job and they're going to do it right. If you get a different quote, well, that's a conversation you're going to want to have before you even start the job. And I've learned that the hard way several times. So I definitely, it's a little oddball advice, but I recommend.
That's good. I mean, just if your quotes are all off, that can make all the difference in flipping a house. I mean, if you're just that could break your budget. So that's very good.
I like that. I didn't even consider that. I mean,
yeah,
I worked for a general contractor for years, probably from 16 until 20 something, 22 or 23. And, I love, getting in there and doing a lot of stuff on my own, but, we would get contractors or we'd get subcontractors to come in and complete different portions of the job. But I guess you never really think, I guess as a general contractor, you might not see that. And this was 10 years ago, so it was a little bit different, or significantly more than that. Using an alias or just something that you don't really think about, but I think that's great advice.
Well, especially with social media. I mean, Let's be honest. I'm a blonde female, and I go in and I ask for what's going to be this square footage of this, how much is it going to cost? It's a lot easy for people to make assumptions, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's today's market. And so you just have to come in if you really want to do the work and you want to do that analysis, make sure that you're getting all your numbers really tight, because that's going to make or break a flip or a rental.
Yeah. Very good advice. Well, Ashley, we're kind of nearing the end here. And one of the things we want to ask you, and that we ask all of our guests, is we would like you to maybe share a piece of your creed. So a creed is a set of beliefs or aims that guide someone's actions. And we ask all of our guests to share a piece of their creed, or maybe a quote or something that you'd share with your own child maybe someday. So we would want to hear that from you.
Yeah. One thing I say to my team, and I say it all the time actually, and it's your vibe attracts your tribe. And it's, how you treat people is what's going to come back at you. And so whether you are in business, whether it's family, whether it's friends, who you hold near and dear and who you keep loyal to, there's subcontractors that, I send them a Christmas card. I talk to them. I bring them over gifts when they have a baby. They treat me so well in the long run. So I think that's just really important to me, is just, it's a kind of I guess a more modern way of saying do unto others as you want to do it to you.
I like that so much.
Your vibe attracts your tribe.
That's
That's
good.
right.
I like it.
That's great. That's great. You just, I totally agree with that. You will attract the kind of people that you put out and that you project, and those people will make you better too. So
100%.
that's excellent. Well, Ashley, this has been so excellent. Thank you. This was such an easy conversation, and you shared so many great nuggets. In fact, I'm going to go back and re-listen to this episode so that I can write down all those websites that you mentioned and check out all that stuff, because you've answered a lot of my questions that I've had, and this will probably the last time you hear from us.
Well, I love talking to you guys, and I really appreciate you taking the time just to listen to somebody do some crazy things around Charlotte, something that's a little off ball, but hey, I appreciate it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Where can our listeners find you? I know we said you had Instagram.
Yeah, Flipping Charlotte is my Instagram handle, and I'm starting to share a lot of other local, smaller mom and pop businesses around Charlotte that really are doing something unique or a little different with the flipping business. So kind of keep tuned for that.
Okay, great.
And the listeners out there as well, you can follow us on at Brothers Creed, a.brothers.creed on Instagram as well, Facebook page, and listen to this. And you can watch this on YouTube as well.
So thanks again. And for all of our listeners, let's build our creed together.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley.